1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Hope I sound great.
And
Hope, go ahead. Just
1,
test.
2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Are we all good on your end, Joey?
good to go. You
Awesome.
can begin.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the first of two candidate forums sponsored by Tap Into Flemington Raritan, dealing with those two areas. I'm Steve Chernosky, contributor to Tap Into, a resident of Lambertville, and tonight's moderator. For tonight's forum, all four candidates who have filed for seats on the Raritan Township Committee were invited to participate. Democrats Hope Cohen and Barbara Simoncelli. Republican candidates Jeff Kuhl and Scott Sipos. All candidates were contacted to arrange available dates to discuss any questions about candidate forum guidelines. The Democratic candidates accepted our invitation, the Republican candidates declined. Tonight's Tap Into candidate forum is for informational purposes only, and there will be no endorsement made by Tap Into. The questions for this forum were put together from submissions sent in by the Raritan Township residents, subject matter obtained from recent Raritan Township news stories, and from subject matter that is part of every election in municipalities all across the state of New Jersey. Additionally, the Hunterdon County Chamber of Commerce has partnered with Tap Into to provide business subject matter questions. For their participation, we thank them very much. The candidates have been informed and agreed to the forum guidelines, 2 minutes for each candidate opening statement, and 90-second answer for each question, and then closing statements. I thank the candidates for taking their time out of their busy schedules to join us this evening. Let us begin with candidate opening statements, and we'll start with you, Hope.
Thanks, Steve. My name is Hope Cohen. I've been living in Raritan Township for slightly over just about 2.5 years. I moved here in June of 2019, so about 9 months before COVID. I've had, therefore, an interesting experience, not fully personal in the time that I've been here, but it's been very exciting to meet the people that I have met in this limited time. I think that I bring to this race and would bring to the office a fresh perspective. I moved here from Manhattan, where for many years I was engaged on the local government level. In New York City, the most local level of government is called a community board, and it consists of each one consists of 50 volunteers appointed by other elected officials. So it's an appointed office, not an elected office, but it is at the lowest, the closest level of government to the people. I lived on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. My community board covered about 225,000 people. I chaired that board for 2 years and also chaired the land use committee and the budget committee. I've been exposed to all kinds of land development issues, transportation issues, and so forth. And that's on the volunteer side. My professional background is also in public service. I've worked for government agencies and nonprofit organizations. I'm currently the chief operating officer of the Battery Conservancy, which is a nonprofit that partners with the New York City Parks Department to maintain and operate the Battery, which is the southernmost park in Manhattan and where you get the ferry to the Statue of Liberty.
Thank you, Hope. Barbara, your turn.
Okay, thank you, and good evening. And I want to thank Tap Into for hosting the forum, the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring it, and for everyone that took time out to be with us this evening. My name is Barbara Simoncelli. My husband Frank and I moved into Raritan Township nearly 50 years ago. We were fortunate to raise our 2 children here, and we really enjoy this beautiful, safe community. I have a degree in elementary education and a master's in human development. I also am a certified reading recovery teacher. I taught 33 of my 34 years in teaching in the Flemington Raritan Public Schools. I taught in all of the elementary schools. As a professional, I was really involved in various committees, and I held many positions, including both the president of the Flemington Raritan Education Association, and then as I retired, I became president of the Raritan County Education Association. I've spent a great deal of time in Trenton lobbying for great public schools. As a resident and a parent, I put a lot of energy into this community. I love this community. It's easy to love. I have been active in both my children's PTOs and professionally in the PTOs where I taught. I've worked as a volunteer with the various athletic programs in the township that my children were involved in. I taught religious instruction at St. Magdalene School, was a parish social person. I'm trying to think here, United Way. I worked in Safe in Hunterdon, delivered Meals on Wheels. And I also was a group leader for the Flemington Raritan Parks and Recreation Ski Club for over 20 years. Okay, I know this township. I've experienced its growth. I believe I have a valuable skill set and a new voice to bring to the position.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll get to the questions now. And what do you, so I'll go to Hope first. So what do you see as your 3 biggest issues while you're running?
Well, let me start with where I come from. As I mentioned, a long history in voluntary public service as well as professional. I am extremely passionate about transparency of government. I know this is not an exciting way to start this question, but to me, it's not just a question of, is somebody taking bribes or anything like that. I'm talking about people being able to access their government, knowing what their government is and what the powers of that government is. I'd like to get that message out to the people of Raritan. I think part of that is to get the committee on the road, that it's not just isolated in one place. Raritan is a huge geographical township, and I think that the committee has to go to the people as well as the people to the committee. That's one thing. That's kind of an evergreen. We have an immediate urgent issue with flooding, obviously, that we've just experienced. And yes, there are global forces of work that get us there, but there are also things that can be done on a local level to prevent or mitigate flooding, having to do with paving and what natural environments are paved over and how they're paved over and what natural environments are left to be natural and in what way. And I think those are all issues that people and the committee are interested in. And I'll just mention quickly, because I know I'm running out of time, that the other big thing that people have on their mind, and not only other people but me as well, is COVID, and how we as a community and our business community are going to emerge from this very challenging, even tragic period stronger than before.
Thank you, Hope. Barbara, same question to you. Top 3 items while you're running.
Well, I agree with, of course, everything Hope had said, and transparency is extremely important. But at this point, I think we need to protect this community against the effects of climate change. IDA's opened our eyes. I know it was an unprecedented thing, but it also made us realize that we have to be prepared for what's coming. And I also worry, are we paying the price of overdevelopment or poor development? I think we really need to examine our infrastructure with a fine-tooth comb and recognize the problems and beginning to develop a plan to fix them. Life with COVID, like Hope said, I mean, it's a national, it's a global problem about right now. We have to make sure we keep ourselves and others safe. I'm very big on that. We know the impact it's had on small businesses. Now we have to figure out what we can do to come together. Chamber of Commerce, our businesses work to build back and strengthen the businesses we now have, not to lose any more. And of course, there's open spaces and recreation, which is my pet thing. I come to the platform with this. We have an incredible existing Parks and Recreation program, but it's part-time. It's part-time. The people do a great job. I worked for them. There's co-directors, and I think we deserve more. We deserve a robust community program, which would also incorporate the use of our open spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So Barbara, you gave me a segue to the next question. So that has to do with open space and development.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm going to go to you first on this. So what is your philosophy on the balance? Because there is a balance, right? Like I've talked to a lot of politicians. It really does seem like the balance between open space and development is a delicate one. For example, the township, along with the Hunter Land Trust and the county, recently preserved 48 acres held by Eden Holdings on Route 523. So what is your philosophy? Where is that balance for you?
You know, I look at it very simply. Yes, there needs to be a balance in life. We have to have balances, okay? And we now know the importance of open space and development, not only for the beauty and preserving our county and giving recreational opportunities for our citizens. We also know the importance in controlling things like flooding. All right. I think that the balance is not just with development. It has to be good development. You know, I don't think we should just be developing, you know, I have one open space, one development, two, whatever. It has to be good development. And that development shouldn't have a negative effect on our community aesthetically or causing more traffic or anything like that. I think the important thing is that we are conscious of what our community wants and what we need and what will keep us safe and preserve our land.
Thank you. Hope, same question. Balance between open space and development.
I don't know that I can add much to what Barbara just said. I mean, I think to me, the question of good development or responsible development versus irresponsible development, a good development, a responsible piece of development will leave the new post-development situation no worse than it found it. So if there was a certain amount of open space, then a new development should be adding enough new open space so that the ratio of space to residents as a whole for the township remains the same or increases. And that is something that the township committee and its boards can absolutely require and enforce. And that's true for open space. It's also true for things like for things like traffic. Basically, any impact, a good development should net out the impact or make things even better than they found it.
Thank you. I hope this next question is going to go to you, and it's going to stick on the subject of open space. So, you know, when we have open space, there's questions of how to best utilize it. So, you know, how do you best use it for residents looking for outdoor recreation, walking trails, and other recreational activities or opportunities? What's the best utilization for an open space in a township with that's so geographically big?
Well, it's going to be different parcel to parcel. There are places that need to be left as nature has them now. There are other places that need to be more accessible to human beings, whether by trails or bike paths, nature overlooks. Then there are places that should be developed into more active recreational opportunities. Just recently, there was I think 48-acre parcel along Route 523 that the township purchased. Kudos there to the township committee and their partners on this at Raritan Land Trust. It's actually very close to Lenape Park, and And it offers an opportunity for something that was called for in the 2008 master plan for Raritan Township, which frankly has been largely sitting on the shelf. I'd love to talk some more about that master plan. But one of the things it says is that in terms of parks and open space, that they're disconnected, and we need to build new connections between pieces to make them more usable. And I think that this new parcel offers a wonderful opportunity example of this, because you have Lenape Park, it has all kinds of active recreation, and it has a parking lot. And it should not be hard for us to build a safe way for pedestrians to go park their car at Lenape and walk across the street and explore nature. There's even a historical site in that new parcel, and have a different experience of open space and the natural world.
Thank you. Barbara, same question to you. Outdoor recreation, walking trails, other recreational activities best used for open space.
There's not a lot more I can say. Hope and I have talked a great deal about this. I'm just would love to see the possibility of any connectivity, how we can connect the open spaces, what we can do to enhance the trails. I've tried to get to a couple of them, and they're beautiful, and it's hard to get around. I think we need to look at that. Not that we want to make sidewalks, but we need to do something to maintain the trails. I bike ride. I enjoy bike riding, but I can't get from one place to another. I think we need somehow or trails within the open spaces. I think they're important. One of my things too is being an educator. What an opportunity to bring children into an open space and look at birds and take a nature walk and stuff like that. So we could have like the boards where you're in this part, this is this tree, look for this bird and that kind of stuff, and incorporate it as a fun learning experiences for families. And I think they'd enjoy that. Thank you.
So Barbara, this next question is for you.
Sure.
So, when we talk about a lot, both of you, I think, mentioned connections, right? And so Raritan Township is surrounds I guess in New Jersey, sometimes it's called a donut hole town, with Flemington. So you have to work with Flemington to connect a lot, right? What does that relationship look like? So what is if you're on committee, what does that position look like working with the borough of Flemington? And what should it look like?
It's interesting that you said the donut hole, because when I used to explain to my kindergartners the geography, I said, think about it as the donut hole. And it really does help. It really does help. You know what? I think that there needs to be scheduled and open communication, constant going on between the borough and the township. Okay, we need to focus on opportunities for shared services. And I think with Ida, that showed us, we were all doing the same thing. How can we help one another in a situation? Maybe they're hit more than we are. Even volunteers have a joint volunteer task that could get together and help both communities. I don't think we should be that separate in that respect. I think also a very important thing as we think about business, we're trying to revitalize and bring in, fill in open, empty parcels, that when we have events, we could work with them. Like they have Diners Week in Flemington. I support that. Now let's have them support Diners Week in Raritan Township. I think there's a lot more we could do to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope, same question to you. Working with the connectivity in the borough of Flemington within Raritan Township.
Thanks, Steve. I want to jump off on a couple of things that Barbara mentioned. Obviously, already there are some partnerships, official partnerships, the utilities, the school district, most obviously. And we should always keep our mind open to other kind of longer term partnerships like that. But I think there's also more immediately a need to look at specific projects together. I mean, the rivers don't know and the trees don't know that you're on one side of the boundary or not, or on the other side of the boundary. And so when the rains came and floods came, they made no distinction between whether you were inside the donut or outside the donut, as Barbara indicated. Well, the first step to figuring out what we should do next would be to hire some kind of a consultant engineering team to give recommendations on things that need to be built and changed and adjusted. And that's something that we should be doing jointly with the borough. And that's a project. It's not a forever department or anything. Maybe it would turn into one, but let's start with a project. And there are going to be other there are other projects and will be other projects like that. One-time projects that might grow into something more long-term, but might not, and need to be dealt with as the neighbors that we are.
Thank you. So this question is going to go to you, Hope. If you could change one thing in your existing zoning code, what would that be and why? I mean, I think you brought up the master plan before. This probably provides some opportunity to talk about that. So go ahead, your question, the existing zoning code.
So I think the zoning is, I think zoning separates uses too much, and that we have very separated places so that you can only have housing in one spot and commercial areas separated, which is why we have the car dependence and lack of walkability that we have in the township. I think that there are opportunities going forward. It's going to be it would be very difficult to go back to things that are already built. But I think there are opportunities going forward to build things that are more mixed use, that is, that are residential and commercial in proximity. And I think an example of that might be some of the strips of vacant storefronts that we have in the township. There are a lot of things that we need to do about vacant buildings, particularly commercial buildings. And there is an opportunity there to rezone that to accommodate housing as well as commerce, and make those the core of a more successful business environment. So that would be the biggest thing, broad strokes, that I would advocate for is more mixed use zoning throughout the township.
Thank you, Hope. Barbara, same question to you, zoning.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Hope on this. I have not, I mean, I've been to areas where they have something kind of like we have over, well, I guess I can mention Starbucks area. There's lots of empty places right now. Right now there are vacant buildings, and so that if a community came in around it, could probably utilize it. But my only problem with mixed zoning right now is that we have to make sure we understand what the residents really want and the impacts on the community. I think this is something, again, to go along with our transparency. Before we get into any changing of these zones, we have to make sure that we have the community aboard, and all of a sudden they're not faced with something that they don't want.
So
thank you.
No, thank you. That gets me to my next question, Barbara, which was related, and you brought it up too, is there's some vacant areas, right, of the township. I certainly drive through it every day on Route 202. And,
Right.
So what is the remedy, like, with changing lifestyles and buying habits? There's some vacant big box stores, right? What initiatives or ideas would you have for attracting tenants or residents, potentially with, different zoning, to these alien shopping centers?
And that's a problem in Raritan Township, New Jersey, and I think every place else in the world. I think we have to step back for a second and really look at lifestyles and buying habits. Okay, that's the really first thing. What do people want? Hope and I have had great conversations about this, and that's another thing where we want to create a vision for this community that our residents are invested in, so we go in the right direction. It's been really difficult. I think we need to stay informed. I think we need to watch the trends. I think we have to know our residents. We have to see what is successful and why. And while we're nurturing this, doing this, we need to continue to nurture our small businesses to make sure that they stay afloat. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope, same question to you.
I think firstly that this question of vacant buildings, whatever they may be, whether they're big box stores or former manufacturing facilities, that is where we need to focus, quote unquote, development, rather than building new stuff, other than the way we just talked about, that where you already have stuff half built and asphalt already there and all that kind of thing. Basically an infrastructure for something new to be built. For the most part, rather than building new stuff, we should be using the stuff we have, the places that we have. And there are just too many places, buildings that are vacant or close to vacant. And we need to figure out what kind of tenants would be good for them. And that's definitely an opportunity for us to reach out not only to the residential community, but as Barb indicated, to the business community, Chamber of Commerce, and so forth. I can spew out some ideas of things that I think would be good to have here, and that different kinds of spaces would accommodate artist studios, business incubators. But it's more than just like my ideas. I think that one opportunity, as we mentioned, is perhaps some residential in some of these buildings, but this is an opportunity to identify what our economic future should be. The township does not have an economic development plan. It was supposed to develop one, and it hasn't. So this would be a focus of developing one, because this is probably the key issue. We've got vacant places. We need new economic activity. What should that be?
How about marijuana? Let's talk about our next question. Thank you for the segue. So Raritan Township voted to prohibit cannabis sales, distribution and cultivation. So we talked about changing habits, and this is a very controversial issue across the state of New Jersey, as you both know. Some locals have expressed concerns about allowing cannabis to be sold in town. Others say that the town is missing on needed sales tax revenue, and places like Flemington are allowing retailers. What are your thoughts on the decision to restrict sales, and what are your hopes for the future as more state laws regarding cannabis sales are fleshed out? Hope, this goes to you first.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying, actually, Raritan Township did not vote against cannabis.
I was misinformed.
The township committee voted against it after the population voted for it in the state question.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
the population was very open to it, and the township committee decided to do something that was opposed to what the people of Raritan Township had actually voted for. But let's set that aside for a moment and talk about the economic pieces here, which I think are the most important. The township committee, in making its decision to ignore the view of its voters, has given up on not just a stream of sales tax revenue, let's put that aside for a moment, but really business opportunities. As you know, Flemington Borough, and it's not the only one, Raritan Township and others nearby, have decided to go forward with some cannabis businesses. And so cannabis businesses will build in those areas. And we in Raritan Township will be 5 years behind by the time the committee, as currently structured, would be willing to reconsider it. So I think it's an enormous lost opportunity in terms of the growth of small businesses. And I think it's an indicator. I find it extremely ironic, considering that the committee is always focused on maintaining property tax at a certain taxes at as low as they can be, that here presented itself an alternative revenue stream, something that could help keep property taxes down because it's coming from another source. And somehow the township committee, in its short-sightedness, decided to pass up on that revenue stream. I find it actually quite amazing.
Thank you. Barbara, same question to you.
I don't know what I could add there. That was wonderful. Thank you, Hope. But I think I agree with everything she said, but we've got to remember, regardless about our personal feelings, Raritan Township voters voted to legalize the sale, distribution, and growth of cannabis. And, you know, I think that perhaps they put their, I hope they didn't put their own feelings into an issue that would have given us an opportunity for business growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's stay on the subject of businesses because as both of you mentioned, you know, we're coming off COVID, and so it could be seen as risky for some to start new businesses or try out. What would be your role as a committee person, specifically supporting the businesses that exist and potential businesses in a post-COVID environment? And Barbara, this goes to you first.
Yeah, that's a very, very difficult question. I really think. I mean, you can say you're supportive, but what do you do about it? And once again, I just think to support the existing businesses and to encourage new businesses to come in, we have to work together. Once again, let's go back to the Chamber of Commerce and business owners that are vested in this. We have to work to see what initiatives we could offer people to come into our community. And that's a whole nother story that we could get into. At this time, I think not that we should wait out the storm and lose an opportunity, but we really have to see where we're going right now before we go any further. It's a great township. We have a lot to offer because of our school systems, because it's a beautiful community. I think it's, we have a lot of unused properties that can be utilized. Now we have to find the way to use them. Thank you.
Can no longer hear
Yep.
Steve.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. So I accidentally clicked off my view, so I can't see myself anymore. So I guess, Hope, I have the same question for you, but, you know, as someone who's newer and was attracted to the area, and then we're trying to attract businesses and also residents. I sat here a year ago and asked candidates the same question, like, is this an opportunity in this post-COVID environment to really advertise the assets of the township? So how would you attract new businesses, help the ones that are already existing, but also just, you know, new people in general?
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things in there. There's the new people in general, and then there's the COVID question. I'd like to just talk about the COVID question for a moment before I talk about my personal experiences as somebody who recently came. I think it's important to remember that Raritan Township is the home of Huntington Medical Center. And that is, I believe, the largest employer in Raritan Township. And it is the only medical center in the county. So our plans for post-COVID and frankly for preparing for any new epidemic, pandemic that would be on the horizon, and we now know that those will come, just as we know that big storms will come, it has to be focused on the medical center. And the medical center brings not only its own jobs, but also associated jobs all around it. And I think that that is a place to begin with focusing on businesses that need to thrive. Then we can also, then there's everything else that we have to work on, as Barb said, everywhere else in the country as well. I would like to say something about my experience in coming here. I came here before COVID. I moved to Hunterdon County before COVID, about 9 months before the shutdown. I made that decision for a lot of reasons. I love New York City. It's the greatest city on the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned. But it was time for me to experience more spaciousness and in all kinds of ways, and a different tempo of life and experience. And I think that is not true only of me. I think that we're seeing more and more immigrants into the area, both immigrants like me from nearby, from New York or Philly or North Jersey, and also immigrants from further away and from different backgrounds and socioeconomic states and so forth. And so the area is becoming more diverse, and in my view, therefore more interesting and exciting.
Thank you. So let's talk about the assets of the township. According to the website SafeWise, Raritan Township was ranked the 25th safest community in the United States and the 13th safest in the state of New Jersey. These rankings considered factors like access to medical care, which you just mentioned, park statistics on crime, personal habits, disease, and mortality. So this is good news. What makes Raritan Township such a great place to live, and what work still needs to be done to improve quality of life for all? I'm sure you both mentioned a lot of things that would fit into this question, but is there anything on top of it that you would like to add? Hope, to you first.
I think that there are a number of things that, again, I'm going to go back to the master plan of 2008. So that was required of all municipalities by the state of New Jersey. Everybody had to do it. And so the committee at that time had to hire a consultant. And one of the biggest things that a consultant does in developing a master plan is talk to the people. Surveys, focus groups, public meetings, and so forth. And that is what informs what goes into a master plan. And what do we see as the recommendations that come out of that master plan? So a lot of things we've already talked about here. Connectivity between the open spaces, more walkability, more transportation options, different solutions to traffic issues, different kinds of housing, different kinds of businesses, essentially diversity across the board on living and working. Those are all things that are related to quality of life. It's a quality of lives, actually, and it has to do with how you live and how you work. And there are a lot of opportunities to make all of those things better. We've got this amazing platform to start from. We've got all the things that you mentioned. We've got beautiful space. We've got a safe neighborhood. We've got great schools. What an amazing place to start to jump off to the next level.
Thank you. Barbara, same question to you on, what work still needs to be done to improve the quality of life for all?
Well, it's obvious that I feel it's a great place. I've been here for 50 years and I wouldn't dream of moving. And I think the work to be done always to preserve the rural character of the community. I mean, I'm for development. I don't want to sound like I don't believe in development, but our utmost thing is to keep it rural and beautiful. A big thing that I've been talking about are the Parks and Recreation. I mentioned it before, and once again, we have an existing Parks and Recreation, and they do an incredible job. They're part-time. They've been part-time since they began. It's time that we open up the programs to service more people. We need to get community involvement in seeing what they need and use examples. Reddington has an incredible Parks and Rec, and use the expertise of the existing directors. And I think we can move forward on quality of life with Parks and Rec. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'm going to relate that question because this came from one of our reporters that covers the township extensively, great writer, writing regarding the American Rescue Plan funds, which, Raritan Township got from DC this past year, and I believe is scheduled to get another round next year as well. So if you're on the township committee, if elected, you will be dealing with this infuse of money. During a recent public comment session on September the 14th, the CWA union had advocated for premium pay at the county level. And this is the same with municipal staff and local first responders, of course, to ensure operations in some sort of hazard pay, because these people are in contact with the public. What are your opinions on investing more in the public administration workers of the township? So this would go to you first, Barbara.
Okay, thank you. I think the first thing we have to say is that our first responders have done an incredible job with COVID and the Ida flooding, and they are to be commended for their service. And I think the most important thing before anything else is that we make sure that they have the equipment and the resources they need to do their job and keep everyone safe. As far as hazard pay, investing more, I think it's really depends on what the current compensation is. I mean, I've worked on negotiating teams when I was a teacher for their services. I mean, I think the structure of how they're being paid and what they're being paid first needs to be examined. And I think we need to know if their compensation is competitive with neighboring communities and fair. And then I think the important thing that we must think about paying our people so that we can attract the best and keep the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope, same question.
Well, I agree with Barbara on the question of how you decide what to pay people, benchmarking and so forth. I do want to say something about the American Rescue Plan. That is money specifically that comes to help communities post-COVID, during COVID and post-COVID. And I would say, again, pre-next pandemic, I really think that those funds are intended and should be used for the expenses associated with dealing with the COVID crisis. So in much of the money is going to need to go to municipalities such as Raritan Township to reimburse those municipalities for the extra expenses they did have with emergency services and so forth. Any new equipment they had to buy, any new people they had to hire, that money is for that. And it's also for, again, when we come to the medical center, bolstering the capacity of our healthcare institutions, their equipment, their resources. And so I think, on the one hand, it's a good pot of money. It's $24 million over 2 years. On the other hand, there's a limit to what you can do with $24 million, and that's for the county. I'm not going to say for the township. So I think there are plenty of things that we need to spend on that directly relate to recovering from and prevent and dealing with future epidemics without going further afield to other possible expenses.
So one expense in the recent past, the township has hired support staff for their general administration. What are the budget implications of new and expanded staff roles and responsibilities and managing employee costs, plus professional services, such as attorney and engineer fees? So we're talking administration, general administration, and budget implications. The question goes to you first, Hope.
Okay, so this is kind of something from almost my entire professional career in the public and nonprofit sectors. How do you manage your budget and your personnel resources most efficiently and effectively? And I would say the first thing is you've got to really define what you need to do. And then you've got to figure out what is the most as in probably any other business, I'm just very used to it in the public sector. What is the most effective and efficient way to deliver those services? In some cases, it's going to be your very own employees. In other cases, it's going to be, for example, shared services with the county, with other municipalities where you have the same people, but doing similar jobs or doing jobs that are merged. It can be done procurement and so forth that would cover multiple municipalities. So that's another model. A third model is to outsource or to hire consultants, and I think that's something that municipalities are largely doing. I think it makes sense because these are types of expertise that you need to spend money on, but you don't necessarily need 40 hours a week. So it has to be, the functionality has to be examined, and then you can figure out what's the best and most cost-effective way to achieve that functionality.
Thank you. Barbara, same question to you.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so in the recent past, the township has hired support staff for their general administration. What are the budget implications of doing this? And maybe possibly new or expanded staff roles and responsibilities in managing employee costs, like hiring consultants or outside attorneys, engineers, and these fees. So basically, what's the philosophy that you have on general administration with government, local government?
Okay, I mean, I think we the word fiscally responsible is the biggest thing. We need to have a budget that we know is a bare bones budget, but a productive budget. Okay, so we need to hire people and see how it works. Maybe we need 1.5 persons, so we hire one and then we hire a half person. I'm big on shared services and outsources. I think that's been the key to keeping our budget costs down. I think too, one of the important things is a constant reevaluation of the budget and the people that you have employed to make sure that you're doing a good job and they are covering the services you need. Thank you.
Thank you. So we did talk about working with Flemington Borough, but I guess this question is more aimed on regionalism in general. So what are your thoughts on regionalism and working with other partners, neighborhood municipalities? You've answered some of that, and I'll give you the opportunity to expand upon that anymore. Like, for example, working with the Hunterdon County Chamber, what is committee's role in doing that? And other prominent stakeholders like, large employers of many people. So Barbara, question goes to you.
I really believe that regionalism is a way we can increase efficiency on local governments, improve quality of life, and save money. Okay, I think that there's a lot of things that can be done, but not everything should be regionalized. I mean, there are certain things that we need to keep in-house. Once again, we need to work with the plan that we have for our community. As far as the stakeholders, I mean, especially now, we've been talking about revitalization and reusing and repurposing and trying to get more energy and money into our community. I don't think we could not partner with the Chamber of Commerce or other municipalities in sharing ideas, collaborating, and making sure that we're going in the best direction for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope, same question to you.
Well, I'm a big advocate of looking at things on a broader scale regionally. I actually worked for an organization called the Regional Plan Association for 3 years. But I do want to say that we need to start with understanding our own neck of the woods first. And I think this brings us back to talking to the community, in a sense, revisiting the things that people said in 2008, and then when the master plan was updated in 2019. That can be a starting point to talk to people now about what they think are the most important issues to proceed with. Again, we're talking about a larger and more diverse population than certainly than 2008 and even than 2019. And knowing that, having a better handle on that, start talking to other places that have similarly worked with their own communities. When you get to certain size projects or undertakings, it makes no sense not to work together with other municipalities or larger areas. I mean, certainly we're going to come back to the question of flooding and global climate change and how our environment is effective. None of these things, as I mentioned before, respect geographical boundaries. When you talk, if you talk about larger transportation solutions, larger infrastructure projects, they all will require multiple municipalities and counties even working together.
Thank you. So many redevelopers in the area are asking for tax abatements, which cut funding to local schools. And this question really kind of goes also into how do you keep taxes low while encouraging development. So a lot of this burden goes on existing taxpayers. What initiatives or types of agreement would you support that would spur development, but also keep the current tax burden equitable? Hope, this question goes to you first on development, tax burden, and also abatements.
Okay, so this goes to the question, firstly, of what kind of development do you want? And abatement. Let's call it more generally incentives. What do you want is so important for you to do that you're going to pay somebody out of taxpayers' money to do it? And when I have been talking to people and campaigning, it is clear to me, absolutely crystal clear, that people do not want new residential development on currently open land or lesser development land. They don't want that. So why on earth would we pay some developer, because that's what an abatement is, or an incentive, to come and develop the thing people don't want in the first place? It is ridiculous. Then there's the question of commercial development. And I think we talked about this before, that really we've got a lot of properties built already that should be used for commercial purposes. And the challenge there is to get businesses to come to those places. And that's where incentives can make sense. What would it take for your business to come into a space that was actually designed for a different kind of business 20 years ago? Maybe an incentive is construction costs, construction of interior spaces, sales tax, being able to buy construction materials and construction services without paying sales tax. There are a number of things that you could do that makes it easier for somebody to move into a vacant commercial building and put a business there. And that is, if we're going to do some kind of incentive, that's the kind of incentive we want to do, something that we want to achieve, and then therefore it's worth putting money into it.
Thank you, Barbara. Same question to you.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point that Hope made, is the fact that giving them some sort of an assessment, giving them some sort of an incentive and not taking away from the tax dollar. I mean, people are concerned about our taxes and the cost of schools and on and on and on and on. I think that's really important. And also I think before we consider any initiative, we have to be concerned with what our residents want. And Hope did mention, and she and I have canvassed a lot together, and we've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, and they're not that interested in residential development at this point. So why would we do that? But we do need to do something to fill those vacant buildings and add revenue. And the type of incentive that we give them will have to come from good negotiations with our township, and we have to trust our township to make these good negotiations. And once again, there has to be a lot of transparency.
And
Thank you.
enforce them. Sorry to interrupt, Barbara, but not just negotiate those agreements,
Enforce,
but then,
yes.
and then enforce them, because that's definitely been another problem with this township committee.
Right.
So I'm going to leave my last question before your closing statements to ask you, is there a question that I should have asked you, or is there a point that you wanted to take more time to go on about? So I will start with you, Barbara. Is there a question I should have asked you that, or something that you would like to talk about a little further?
You know, I reviewed a lot of the questions and did a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting. And there's a lot of things going on that are important in the community. But the question that referred to the arts and the connection between the arts and society and quality of life, I really think that's something we're missing out on. We have a lot of things to worry about now, our infrastructure and getting back from COVID, but this is something we shouldn't lose sight of. Throughout my career, I was literally blown away by the arts, what the kids accomplished in the art class and the music class and drama and things like that. It brought a whole nother level to feeling good about themselves and participation. And the same thing for adults. I look at Stengel Pottery, and it's really interesting how they've redone that area. Perhaps we can take one of those vacant buildings and purchase and turn it into an art center, or start someplace there so that our citizens have a place to come to and enjoy.
Thank you. Hope, same question to you.
I think Barb makes a really good point there about other uses of vacant, underutilized properties, not just new businesses, but other things that we can do for the community. I think one of the things I would like to say, kind of even more nuts and bolts than we've talked about already, is let me take a moment to talk about paving. I find it frustrating how our roads are paved in Raritan Township. And for a while I thought, well, that's just me being picky about, whether it's gravel or whether it's asphalt. But in talking to people in the campaign, I've found that issues of road repair are top of mind to many, many people. And in this moment, when we are looking at, again, I'm going to come back to the flooding situation as, something we're going to be grappling with because there are larger global forces, but that we can do something to make less bad locally. Right now, the way we're paving is not making it less bad. It's not the best way to pave, technically, and the way we're doing it is not fair or understandable to the residents. There doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to when different streets are paved or how. So I know it might be mundane on a certain level, but it is quite fundamental to what local government is responsible for, and that's going to probably lead into my closing statement.
Well, I just can say on that, as a resident of Lambertville who got hit very hard by Ida, and I've been having conversations with a West Amwell representative who's in the know on impermeable cover and says that Lambertville has too much of it. And I'm like, so what should I do with my driveway? I just put up a basketball court for my kid to shoot baskets. Should I not repave that? Should I look into a permeable paving company? Like, what should I do? So it's a very, at least on a residential level as a homeowner, it's a discussion that I'm hearing more and more here locally, especially. So, all right, so we're going to start with our closing statements. We're going to have Hope, you can begin. And thank you for all being here and taking the time out of your busy schedules. And Hope, closing statement to you first.
Thank you, Steve, for moderating, and thanks to Tap Into and the Chamber for sponsoring this forum. And I think it's one step in how we talk to the residents and how they hear from us, and hopefully can follow up and talk to us about their concerns and their ideas for solutions. I come from New York most recently, so I have to quote the great New York mayor, Fiorello LaGuardia, who said, "There is no Republican or Democratic way to fix the street." And that is, I think, the fundamental thing we need to do here. This is the most local level of government that Barbara and I are running for office. And there are a lot of big things that we started to talk about here, but fundamentally, we've got to clean the streets, fix the streets. Those things, keep the parks clean. Those things shouldn't be Republican or Democrat. They should just be done well. And if they're not done well, then that's a problem for whatever the government is. And the people need to be part of the governing process and be able to give the government feedback on how it's doing. But if the people do not know what their government is, or where it's situated, or how to talk to it, because I have to say, the way the township meetings are run, the entire structure does not, in my view, does not encourage public input, then government is failing its people at the most local fundamental level. I want to be part of bringing the government to the people, knowing what's within their power for within the most local set of questions for the township, and what we all need to do at higher levels of government from county on up.
Thank you. Barbara, your closing statement.
Okay, people ask me why I'm running, and I come up with many reasons, but it's this new voice. I've lived here a long time, and I have a lot of experience, and I know a lot of people, and I have a vested interest like a lot of people, but I do really believe that I have a new voice to leadership. I think to engage residents. I mean, my background has always been collaborative. There's no way that I walk forward without walking people surrounding me in any decision I make. And I want a shared vision for the future, and I want to reinvigorate those parks and recreation programs. I have a genuine passion. I've always talked about my passion. I want to make sure that our township is ready to grow, is ready to prosper. And I also think it's important that we recognize and respect the needs and the diversity that exists in our community and just today's community. And thank you, Steve, for this opportunity.
Well, thanks to both of you for being here. Again, my name is Steve Chernosky, contributor to Tap Into, resident of Lambertville, and I was tonight's moderator. And I would like to thank the people who joined us tonight, Democrats Hope Cohen and Barbara Simon-Selly. Thank you very much. And thank Tap Into, and again, thanks to the Hunterdon County Chamber of Commerce. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you in November with Election Day.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.